All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started, and I wanted to welcome you all. I'm sure we'll have more folks trickling in the next couple of minutes, but I did want to go ahead and get started. So welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Sarah Kachuba. I'm the Director of Study Abroad at W&J, and I love my job. In my role, I get to support students as they travel around the world doing amazing things and traveling in pursuit of their academic and personal goals. And so I'm part of the Office of International Programs. We're located in the hub, and one of our objectives is to be one of the most welcoming spaces, or right now, virtual spaces on campus. So please feel free to reach out to myself or to my colleague who's here on the call right now, Dr. Dana Poole, Director of International Student Initiatives, at any point to talk about your hopes and dreams and goals for the future. So I should say, obviously, travel is impacted right now due to current conditions. However, in our office, we're planning with a positive outlook. And during this time, we hope to still provide you with some programming through an international lens. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome an alum of the college, Mr. Jake Meyers, class of 2015. Jake is going to share how global opportunities, particularly study abroad, shaped him as a person and contributed to his future success. So today you're going to have the chance to ask questions and have a dialogue with Jake. He's going to give a little bit of a presentation, and then we're going to open discussion. And it's our hope that this will be an interactive and useful dialogue for you. And I should mention too that today's session is the first in a series. So we'll be sending out other announcements about events similar to this one where we're highlighting alumni of the college and all the wonderful things they're doing now. At this point, I'd like to mention that we are recording the session. So for anybody who can't make it today, they can watch later. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jake before I turn the floor over to him. A little bit about Jake. As an environmental studies major, Jake had the opportunity to send a significant portion of his studies abroad, including a semester abroad in South Africa, a semester abroad in Cambodia, 3 Maryland projects, including Ecuador, South Africa, and Southeast Asia, an intercession course in Arizona, and a research fellowship in Japan and China. After graduating from W&J, Jake served in the Peace Corps in Benin, West Africa, and won a Fulbright Research Award in Cambodia. He went on to get a master's degree in development practice from the University of Arizona, where he completed fieldwork in Kenya and Mexico, engaged in subjects like climate change, international development, food security, and storytelling. Jake currently works as an emergency management specialist with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, in Washington, D.C., and is scheduled to embark on a storytelling expedition with National Geographic in Iceland in 2021. Jake's going to share his experience and offer advice for those seeking career opportunities in public service, the nonprofit world, and academia, and cross-cultural exchange programs like Peace Corps and Fulbright. So Jake, thank you so much for being here and welcome. I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you.
Thanks for the welcome. All right, let me just get this screen going. So yeah, hi guys. Coming at you from Washington, D.C. today. Today, I'll just kind of be going over my study abroad experience and some of the opportunities I was able to garner as a result from my time abroad and from the great work of faculty like Sarah, who helped me kind of pursue these opportunities and ways in which you could, I know right now is a tricky time talking about study abroad when we're all locked inside, but I'll try to throw out some suggestions and tips on what you can do now and what you can think about in the future, because we will open back up eventually. And then when that time does, you can take advantage of it, whether you're a student or a postgrad looking to develop different career opportunities. So yeah, just gonna talk briefly about my study abroad undergraduate career. I was kind of all over the world with the great fortune to go to like South America, Africa, and Asia. I'll talk about some of the opportunities I did afterwards, and then I want a Q&A, so if anybody has a question or you want to stop me, you can maybe throw a text in the chat or just interrupt on the mic, but I'll be looking at those while we present. So I got my start in W&J in my first year seminar class like everyone else does. I took a course on evolution and with Dr. Malinak of the chemistry department. And one of the core teachings of his class was about Plato's allegory of the cave. And it's all about like the take home message is like, you might see the world one way, like the gentleman on the right, looking at the shadow, but in reality, there's something else going on. And so you kind of want to change your belief systems by stepping outside of the cave, going out of your comfort zone. And when you leave your comfort zone, you'll fundamentally change the way you view the world. And so that kind of really left an impact on me as a freshman. I thought about ways in which I could go outside my cave of comfort and seek new opportunities. And to me, the most obvious pathway forward with that was to study abroad. So I got some of my inspiration to travel, looking at famous explorers like Charles Darwin or Ferdinand Magellan, who was like the original globetrotter, even though he actually didn't go around the world. He got stabbed in the chest by a spear in the Philippines. But these voyages really fundamentally changed the way the world perceived different things. And so I think when you think about studying abroad in your undergraduate career, if you get the chance to go abroad or even just think globally, you will change your perception, and that will have a profound impact in cascading ways I don't think it's hard to imagine at the time, but you'll see value in that later. So yeah, I was really inspired by Charles Darwin, and I was interested in environmental studies and biology. And so I was able to get my first Magellan project out in the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador. This was my first time going abroad, and it was a very uncomfortable experience. I didn't know how to speak Spanish. I remember getting off the plane and not ordering how to get food. But I ultimately was able to kind of spend a lot of time crafting a research project, looking at how tourism differs between the Galapagos Islands versus the Amazon. And when I was out there, because I was abroad, I was able to kind of understand in a more material sense, like what my passions were. And I thought at the time I was really interested in animals and wildlife conservation, and I still am, but I became interested in the human side of conservation. When I was abroad, I like on this Galapagos Islands, for example, there's a skate park with a bunch of people there, and there's 25,000 people who live on the Galapagos Islands. And I was curious, what's their story? And so I kind of started to see how communities interact with the issue of conservation. And then when I was in my first Magellan, I kind of fell in love with sharks a bunch, and able to get my second Magellan out in South Africa. So by this point, I knew I wanted to study sharks from my first Magellan, and I wanted to get myself to South Africa. And that's when I started working with Sarah in the Study Abroad office, and able to leverage a semester abroad in South Africa. But first, the summer beforehand, I wanted to get this fellowship. And so by combining my Magellan projects with my semester abroad, I was able to kind of like really affordably travel the world and for an extended period of time. And so that's kind of how I was able to rack up a lot of these different things. But I'll go into detail now about my semester abroad in South Africa. So we have a partnership, I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, with Rhodes University, which I think is a fantastic partnership and affiliation to have. And I don't think a lot of students necessarily pursue this, but I really would encourage those who are interested in studying abroad, who have the opportunity to do so in a few years' time, to do so, especially if you don't have any language ability, whether it be a Romance language, because the language of learning here is English. But this is a really fun university, about 7,000 students, located right in between, it's in Grahamstown, so that big dot on the bottom right of the map there, equidistance between Cape Town and Johannesburg. It's a beautiful little college town, and it was like 40 minutes away from this nice elephant sanctuary. And what was unique, I think, to this study abroad program versus maybe other study abroad programs is that they have a big community engagement program, and they kind of treat it as a professional internship. So when I was out there, I was able to volunteer and spend my time as a study abroad student, learning the local, one of the local languages, and trying to engage with youth at a computer center and gardening. And that was a really cool experience that got me engaged in volunteer work. And that kind of was something that I put on my resume for a few years after, and opened up doors for me because of that study abroad experience. They also had different homestay opportunities, so you could get to stay with local Isignosa families and kind of understand what life is like outside of that university bubble. It's just like Washington, PA. Life is a little bit different outside a university's borders. And the main benefit too, from what I got out of my semester abroad, beyond just being in South Africa, was that I took courses that aren't offered at W&J. And that really impacted me positively. I mean, I took like some classes that we don't have, like I took some Marines bio classes, took some history classes that provided me a nice, unique perspective on South Africa and enriched my time abroad. And And then I took some classes on global development, which I later got a master's in. And those were some coursework that we kind of touch upon at WNJ, but I got to get a new faculty perspective on that, especially for some of you who are in programs who maybe only have 4 or 5 faculty. It's a good way to kind of see some diverse perspectives. And then again, also just the student body interacting there. It was kind of an interesting dynamic because people didn't necessarily think I was abroad or a foreigner there, because of 10% of the population there is Afrikaans and white, but that was kind of an interesting dynamic. Some other interesting things that happened there. I was there actually when Mandela died. So that was a big moment in history, and it was a really interesting opportunity to be a part of that experience. And then also too, when you're studying abroad, like most study abroad students, you get a chance to travel to nearby countries. And in Southern Africa, it's a lot easier to travel. You can take a bus for like $20 to Botswana or something like that. So it's a really cool experience. I recommend it. And my time here, 6 months on the continent of Africa, really made my application very competitive when it came time for me to apply to the Peace Corps. So that I definitely attribute that community engagement program and that experience of like learning and being on the continent to that later translated to my service in the Peace Corps. So after doing that, I had a chance to do an intersession class in Arizona with Dr. Kilgore. And this is kind of more of a study abroad domestic opportunity. And there's plenty of those opportunities, I believe, that still exist on campus. And I recommend treating domestic opportunities to go out of Washington, Pennsylvania, to the same caliber almost as international programs. You kind of get the same perspective and experience in a way, especially in Arizona, it can feel like another country at certain times. But my appetite for traveling abroad led me to this opportunity to engage with the border and think about humanitarian issues that are happening every day out there. And this opportunity also kind of paved the pathway for me to come back to graduate school. And then another just non-semester abroad program I got able to do. At this point in my career, I was a junior and I had a reputation of being international. And there was a fellowship program on campus looking at the impact of the sustainability issues in the automobile industry. And a student actually dropped out of the fellowship last second. And I got asked to join the team just based off my reputation of being someone who's a little bit more globally minded. And so that was another example of how things can cascade again. So maybe if you study abroad one semester in WNJ, it could open up another opportunity elsewhere. But this was a cool fellowship. I was actually all throughout Japan and in Wuhan, China, which is the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's interesting. But it was a great way to combine my, I started doing this in the summer and led to a Magellan project, which led to a semester abroad. I was able to combine, I got really creative when I was a student in terms of being able to combine different opportunities into one. Because you only need one of those experiences to pay for a plane ticket. And so once you're out there, things become very affordable. So I had this fellowship, I did a Magellan, and I did another semester abroad all throughout Southeast Asia. And it did not come at a big cost to me because I had support and through different scholarship opportunities too on campus. Always ask too if you can get a scholarship opportunity. There's all kinds of sources even outside of WNJ. And if you want to chat about that, I can talk to you privately on that. So this led me to another Magellan project out in Southeast Asia. So I had a really funny story with another WNJ student, international student, Jack. He was from Myanmar and he is pretty prominent from the country. The prime minister, I think, personally helped finance his studies at WNJ. And so he would get all these kind of crazy manuscripts from people asking them, or like documents, or asking people if he could speak to President Obama at the time. And one of those people was a monk who believed that he found the solution to stop climate change with his mind. So I got this, he kind of like threw this manuscript at me at the table in the Commons. And I became interested in this concept of how religion might shape people's attitudes towards the environment. And so I thought about a way to do another Magellan project, my final one, where I was interested in going across Southeast Asia, doing a cross-comparative analysis on what's called eco-theology. So it's how the environment shapes theological perspectives. And so it's interesting in Southeast Asia because you have the Philippines, Indonesia, Singapore, Myanmar. So they're very similar countries in terms of environment and landscapes, but very different socioculturally. You know, Philippines is a Catholic nation, Singapore is more secular, Indonesia and Malaysia are the two largest Islamic countries, and then Myanmar is Burmese. So I was able to kind of go out there and have this grassroots Magellan experience where I just talked to people and conducted interviews and got this perspective and the more time you spend abroad and just talking to people, the more your perspectives change. And the more you get to understand what kind of opportunities are out there. So when I was out here doing this, I got engaged with a political grassroots group in the Philippines. That was a Green Party. Got to work with nonprofits and different institutional leaders. And so you kind of get a feel for when you're abroad, what opportunities are out there that I think you can do so in ways in which you don't necessarily get on campus. So yeah, kind of toured the country, toured these different countries. And at one point I was staying with this monk who let me give lectures on climate change in Myanmar, which I was not qualified for at the time. But here's some pictures from that experience. This is just on the top left there. Those are his followers kind of meditating at a globe, trying to stop a hurricane from coming and hitting New Jersey. So they were thinking about us. Like one year, a typhoon came barreling towards Myanmar. The whole country prayed, and then all of a sudden, the next day, the typhoon did a 90-degree turn and like went and hit Bangladesh. So that was kind of an interesting dynamic. And I still talk with this monk today. It's kind of cool. I've sent some friends out there, and I produced a story online about him, and was able to connect him with a French filmmaker. So I was able to make him famous a little bit. So it's kind of cool ways you can stay in touch with people from abroad when you're from your undergraduate career. So yeah, I did all that in Asia, and then it all kind of teed up myself to do a semester abroad in Southeast Asia. And so the reason why I wanted to go abroad across all these different continents is I wanted to like challenge my perspective, and I thought that I would learn different things from different places. And so I didn't. It's really easy to go abroad in your undergrad, and then that opportunity kind of dwindles, I think, afterwards, unless your career is specifically rooted in international programs. But I had the great fortune of working with Sarah again and petitioned to get a program that isn't pre-approved through the office with a program called School for Field Studies. I got to spend a semester abroad in Cambodia, kind of looking, it was a really big emphasis on field work. And so that was a cool opportunity for me to kind of travel along the Mekong River, understand climate change, learn a little bit of the Cambodian language of Khmer. And I ended up doing a Fulbright in Cambodia. And so my semester abroad here really just set the tone and gave me the contacts and the ability to be a very competitive candidate for that opportunity. So just briefly, I had really prolific experience in W&J, and so I was able to kind of squeeze out 2 semesters abroad and some Magellans and an intercession and fellowship trip. And this really had me prepared in ways in which I was, very few people I think have these kind of opportunities at other institutions. And so my recommendation for anybody listening to this is to take full advantage of it nonstop. Like for me, I made the choice to drop my second major. Well, I don't think I was going to really finish it. But I chose to be a single major and study abroad twice. And I think if some people are on the ropes between studying abroad or being a double or triple major, I would really emphasize studying abroad, because that gives you opportunities and experiences in which maybe another formal bachelor's degree doesn't necessarily do. But that's just kind of my 2 cents. So by the time I graduated, I got, not only did I have stamps in my passport, but I got these different experiences and soft skills that carried with me post-grad. So yes, I had language skills and learned a little bit of Spanish and Khmer and some Southern African languages. But more importantly, I had the confidence to be abroad independently, and anybody who read my resume could pick up on that. And it's also a really great opportunity to develop your passions. I mean, you think that you will know what you want to do for the rest of your life within 4 years at the old age of 22, but you're probably going to change your mind a bunch of times. And I've done things since graduating I never thought I would. And so I think studying abroad is a great way to materialize what your passions are. And for me, that was kind of getting in love with global environmental issues. But more importantly, also, I knew what career opportunities existed abroad. I think a lot of folks in undergrad don't spend the time investigating what you can do professionally afterwards. For example, when I was an environmental studies major, I think maybe a lot of people, and I might be myself included, I don't think I could name 10 nonprofit organizations who did environmental work maybe. A lot of people don't spend the time looking at what's out there, but because I went abroad, I became familiar with different names like the Wildlife Conservation Society or World Wildlife Fund, or these big names or small names too. And so the more time you spend out abroad, especially in the global South, expat communities, expatriate communities are very small. And if you go to a certain Western restaurant, you'll probably bump into a diplomat or somebody. And then that's a great chance for you to interact and explore what else is out there. So by the time I graduated, I knew I wanted to be abroad. And for me, the most easy way to leverage my study abroad experience was to jump into the Peace Corps. So I was able to, within a month of graduating, become an environmental action advisor in Benin, West Africa, focused on different initiatives like food security, malaria interventions, and gender equality. The bottom left is a little march I led with a bunch of female high school students where we kind of communicated the area why their education was important. So it was a really cool opportunity. I felt like compared to some other folks who joined the Peace Corps, that because I studied abroad, I could come in hitting the ground running. I felt confident being abroad, and I knew that I was going to mess up on the language. I didn't speak French in undergrad, but I became fluent within like 2 months or so because I had to. But I recommend anybody, and you don't have to be interested in doing international development to do Peace Corps, but I think it's a great opportunity post-grad because it's just 2 years of a life-changing experience, but also it opens up a lot of doors into the public service. So I'll just share a little bit of stories, I think. The top left was a cool project I did we trained community health workers to identify symptoms of malaria and then go to preschools every day and do test and treat. So they would go in and test and treat any child under 5 for malaria. That's something that I would have never thought could potentially be qualified to do right out of undergrad. I didn't study public health, but my study abroad experience kind of gave me the confidence to pursue diverse opportunity. It was a cool area in Benin, West Africa. The Bariba, that was the culture up where I was at, are ancient warriors who ride horses and weave these traditional garments. And the last day of my Peace Corps experience there, they let me, they had a going away party and they let me ride the horse around town, the king's horse. There was kings out there. So that was a cool experience to build these cross-cultural exchange connections. And then just worked with preschoolers a lot. Children are always fun. And if you study abroad too, especially in the global South, your best friends are probably going to be little kids who are just bugging you to play soccer or whatnot. But yeah, definitely, again, very competitive application for the Peace Corps, thanks to my study abroad experience. And for those of you who are maybe graduating on the horizon, they are still accepting applications. Their departure dates are a little uncertain at this time, but they will be going back and they do expect to do so next year. So I would get an application in now. And if you want helps and tips on all that, happy to help. So yeah, I did the Peace Corps and jumped into a Fulbright right after in Cambodia. And so I would not have been able to do this full stop if I had not done my semester abroad in Cambodia. When I was there, I became really well attuned with the local issues with environmental dynamics at play. And I had all these contacts and I had professors out there. And so when it came time for me to apply to a Fulbright, I went right to them. I asked, hey, I want to go study something that no one else has studied, make my application competitive. So I partnered with the Wildlife Conservation Society. I worked in this area in the bottom left here on the Tonle Sap Lake, where I studied how a flooded forest was actually catching on fire due to climate change, and was able to kind of go out there and conduct survey and ethnographic research, and then listen to the community's voice and report their perspectives back to the decision makers, the Ministry of Environment and whatnot, and help them craft fire management plans that were more in tune to their beliefs and customs. And then when I was in Fulbright, it's also a very big cross-cultural exchange program. It's part of the diplomatic branch of Department of State. So you get to kind of like go around and work with the US Embassy. I got to interact with the US Ambassador a few times, judging different competitions. I worked at this thing called an American Corner. Every country has one. And you can go in and teach English and share American holidays with people. The top left is, I was sharing the values of MLK Day and had students do an I Have a Dream speech and whatnot. So it was a really cool experience. And again, I can't separate any of my one experiences abroad without rooting it back to my career at W&J and me being abroad. So following my Fulbright, I realized that I didn't really know what I was doing research-wise. And so I wanted to go back to school and continue my education. So I got a master's at University of Arizona, studying development practice. It was a cool program because it placed me at the border of United States and Mexico and Arizona. Had a chance to focus on food. That was something that I built off of my interest in Peace Corps. Had a chance to work with research institutes and also local nonprofits domestically in Tucson. But focused on like cattle and livestock and urban food security. And I can go on about that, but I'll keep the focus more back to W&J and studying abroad in a second. But during my time in Kenya, I actually had a big interest in digital storytelling. And this is something that I was doing all throughout my undergraduate career. I always, whenever you travel, you want to take a photo, write a blog, share your experience. But all of a sudden you start noticing that you're engaging with people who have very different stories than anybody else that you met back in your home area. And so I started to like have a habit of taking a photo of somebody, interviewing them like a journalist, and then sharing their story to much the tune of like Humans of New York. And so I did that with the gentleman on the top of the page there, Francis. I did a story, I made a video about him and his urban farming techniques and how he's fighting climate change in Nairobi. And that actually got published. I entered that video into a competition with a storytelling group. And I actually was able to win this big storytelling group. And the grand prize is to go with National Geographic next year and go to Iceland. And that's something that if I didn't study abroad, I probably wouldn't have developed a passion for like just learning other people's stories and emphasizing culture at some of these environmental issues. And so that opened up all kinds of opportunities for me, and I'm very thankful for that. And so just briefly, right now, I currently work at FEMA, and I didn't expect that, but I graduated right on top of COVID, and I thought there's a lot of job security with these guys. But in a way, my job with FEMA is I go out and I travel. So I'll be in Louisiana in 2 weeks or so. And I got this job, I don't know anything about emergency management, but I had all these soft skills that I gained throughout my years in international development and through being exposed to challenging situations that I got through studying abroad. And so, it's a cool job, and I didn't expect to be here, but I think the long story short is that your time in W&J will prepare you for a diverse portfolio of opportunities. And so I have the flexibility to adapt and maybe switch between different fields when I want to. And I definitely do root that from some of the soft skills I got through studying abroad. So yeah, just kind of taking a step back here and looking at some of my accomplishments and how they connect to studying abroad. I got into the Peace Corps, I think, because of my semester abroad in South Africa. And then in the application process, they really focus on, are you resilient? Because a lot of people will drop out of those opportunities. And if you study abroad, it's pretty clear that you have the capacity to thrive in another culture, another country for a few months at a time. And so that's definitely a valued aspect of the application process. And also just because of my studied abroad experiences, I was familiar with different global issues, and I had demonstrated cross-cultural capabilities, which is the main goal of Peace Corps. And then there's volunteer work abroad. And I encourage anybody who does study abroad or wants to in the future to seek volunteer opportunities to enrich your experience out there. It's the same thing with the Fulbright, linking to my in-depth knowledge of global environmental themes that I got through W&J. And then I also attribute my studying abroad to my interest in going to graduate school. By studying abroad, you kind of narrow your scope of what you're interested in research-wise. You become more passionate, becomes more clear once you can, especially for something like environmental issues, seeing it in person is just something different than reading about it or talking about it in the classroom setting. And so just for your awareness, if anybody has interest in going to grad school, doing Peace Corps, Fulbright, or working at international research institutes or applied, it's called like applied research, or working in nonprofits or charitable foundations, or interest in public service, I have a background in all those areas, and none of that I think I would have been interested in had I just stayed put on campus through my 4 years in W&J. So if you want to talk about those things, please do reach out to me. But I want to kind of take a more meta approach to the conversation here. And so I want to talk about how studying abroad kind of leads to professional opportunities more specifically. So I think when you apply for a job, one of the top 2 questions that are applicable to studying abroad is, they say, tell me a time when you overcame a difficult situation. Anybody who's studied abroad can easily do that, and they can tell some crazy story. It could be even just as simple as a time that you had a difficult situation with a plane ride or something. These questions for me are very easy, and it's entertaining too to have an international story, especially for review panels who are interviewing 100 people or something, and your story stands out because it was funny or different. Or share an example of a time you worked independently. The job that I have now requires me to work very independently, and I can default, when I was interviewing for this, I defaulted to my time abroad as a way to showcase that I can thrive in independent and difficult working situations. And so job skills that you get, I think, from studying abroad is you're able to communicate across barriers. And yes, there's an obvious language barrier, but that can be all kinds of barriers. And so I think people who study abroad and travel the world are able to exercise bigger empathy and have a better sense of resiliency. And I think those are just universal skills that people want in the workforce. You also have organizational skills because you're responsible for yourself, especially in undergrad. I know you're adults, but you're still at a young age, and you can show that you can thrive and figure things out in a new context. That is something that I think employers definitely want to emphasize. And then cross-cultural exchange, I think, is a really cool and I think thriving soft skill that employers want to see, especially if you want to pursue a career abroad. And so I would suggest too, in terms of career development, I don't think a lot of people do this in undergrad, and I think they should. You need to go out and like scan what your dream jobs are and look at what skills they require, and then work backwards and ask yourself, if I'm weak on this, how can I make myself better? And for me, I wasn't the strongest student my first 2 years abroad in the WJ, but I decided to, go abroad and try to like revamp my resume. And that really was a new experience, I think, that helped me be very competitive graduating, whereas opposed to if I didn't stay abroad, I would have had a mediocre GPA and I don't know what my prospects would have been otherwise. So yeah, again, when you study abroad, you get a chance to cultivate like non-academic passions into professional development opportunities. So I kind of touched upon this already, but I became really interested in photography, and I think that's a natural passion that almost anybody who goes abroad does, just because you're awestruck by some of these landscapes and food or whatever that you see in abroad. But it was a great little interest, and I thought it was really cool the day I earned like, I don't know, 25, 50 bucks from the Study Abroad office for a photo competition. So then I became a paid photographer, so that was pretty cool. But I really took an interest in photography, and again, I kind of took inspiration from Humans in New York, and then even one of my Magellan projects, I tried to use storytelling as a way to raise money for a rural community. I was trying to go out in the Philippines the year of a devastating storm that killed 10,000 people, super typhoon Haiyan. And so I tried to go out there and I visited the village. And when I was out there, my trip got short because another typhoon came and struck the island. So I was able to maintain a connection with those people out there, and they kind of like appointed me a governor. It was just a little title. But I was able to use photography and capture this, take pictures of what happened there and I think I raised like $2,000 or $3,000 to build 12 new homes for people. So it was a really cool passion that I saw actually was able to make an impact. And so that kind of became a passion that I was thinking of, how can I use storytelling to make a difference? I'm out here seeing these things that my friends or people or maybe even decision makers aren't seeing. And so I kind of wanted to use my platform to advocate for change through photography and storytelling. And then eventually when I was in Peace Corps, I kind of kept doing, I treated my Peace Corps service as a study abroad semester. So every time I saw something new, I took a photo of it, wrote about it, journaled, reflected, blogged about it in a way. And on online HQ in Peace Corps took notice of it. And they actually asked me to pilot a virtual reality program when they gave out little headsets to people. So that was a cool opportunity. And then I talked briefly about my award-winning story in Kenya and how I'm able to go to Nat Geo. I was supposed to go this past summer, but that got, of course, the cruise ship industry isn't really, being on a ship isn't really something you want to do right now. So that got pushed back for another year. So yeah, so some key insights, I think, in reflecting back on my WJ career. I think if you really want to make the most out of your international experiences or just experiences in general, you need to start to think about how to network. And that starts with not being afraid to ask people to meet and just talk. You don't have to have an agenda. You just want to meet people. When I was abroad, I met, NGO staff, people from the US Embassy. I just try to reach out and have a cup of coffee. This is advice that you get all the time, but it's really important. And now, even though we're stuck inside, I think we're finding it easier to connect with one another, even though we might be fatigued by Zoom and all that. But reach out, and I think you should start creating a LinkedIn profile and keep in touch. I use Facebook as a tool for career development as much as I do for LinkedIn. Every time I was abroad, I would make friends with people on Facebook and keep tabs with them and different researchers or whatnot. So I would just go, and also the next piece of advice I have is like be aggressive. So, you have to be aware of what's happening in the world to try to figure out how you can be a part of it. So if you're not like consuming the news in different regions of the world, if you're just glued to like X, Y, and Z news sources in the US, you're not aware of what's happening elsewhere in the world. For example, my Fulbright, I followed Cambodian newspapers when I studied abroad there. I followed Facebook pages about Cambodian environmental issues. And then I came across this fire issue, and that's drew inspiration for what I did for my Fulbright project. So I think just always being aggressive in learning and trying to see what's going on out there in the world. And that also involves taking advantage of what's on campus to you right now. If you're not bothering the crap out of faculty members and asking to meet with them every day or week, you're missing out on an opportunity, especially at WJ, at a small school at WJ. You don't get that everywhere else, that unvetted access to faculty members. And so just ask them, hey, I think about going abroad. Do you know anybody? And even though some of the professors might be domestically focused, they might know somebody within their network, or they went to school with X, Y, and Z person. And so, yeah, my career in W&J just kind of like built upon and exploded off of the opportunities in ways I never thought I would. I didn't think I'd be working for FEMA right now, or I didn't think I'd be in Arizona, or everything. I didn't think I was, so I think just being open to new experiences will help you in the long run be open to new opportunities, professionally speaking. And so key insight, two things that I wish I did again, if I were to study abroad again in W&J, I wish I spent a bigger effort learning the language and learning the history of the area, and not just, going on the Wikipedia page the night before my flight and getting the baseline of what happened in that country. But, reading important pieces of literature from those countries can give you a really good perspective on the type of society that you're going to be engaged with a few weeks or month long time. So yeah, now we're all in an interesting time with COVID. We're all grounded. So there's not really much you can do, I don't think, in terms of trying to become more globally minded, or, study abroad. And if you're, finishing up your undergraduate degree in COVID. But my suggestions are just simple. If you can't study abroad and you wish you could have, read everything. Read books, read different voices from different parts of the world, watch documentaries, and you'll get inspired. That's kind of how I got my start. I, watched all kinds of documentaries and read a few different books that gave me the motivation to craft different Magellan Project ideas or study abroad in different ways. Another thing you can do right now that's obvious is just start learning languages, especially if you want to do something like the Peace Corps or work abroad. Especially Romance language. If you can learn Spanish, French, Arabic, Portuguese, any of these common languages, you can that might open up a lot of opportunities. And if you invest in that time now, it will open up opportunities for you later. And then again, just network and try to meet with people, Zoom with people. A lot of people who are busy working and fatigued by sitting in their home would love to spend 30 minutes talking with a young mind and sharing their experience and offer them insights, or even just talking about their career tracks. And I think the more you can reach out in undergrad and talk to people in your dream profession and ask them what their story is and how they got to where they did, will really get the gears turning for you. And then you can think about ways in which you can use the time that you have now to maybe see yourself replicating that process as well. Also, studying abroad and volunteering, I think are kind of similar in a way. That you're interacting with different things, you're helping yourself, you're helping others. But I think right now, engage in volunteer work, especially if you want to be in the nonprofit world. A lot of those skills that you learn volunteering at a food bank in Washington, Pennsylvania are applicable to delivering humanitarian aid in Africa. So I would suggest being involved as much as you can, because a lot of those skills are transferable to international context. And then again, just upscale yourself. So seek out online opportunity. There's lots of online courses you can take. So again, I would suggest if you want to work abroad or do something abroad, look at that dream job, look at what those key qualifications are and those desired skills, and then learn it, research it. And then I wanted to take a note for those who wish they could have studied abroad this year but can't. Here are some opportunities you can do post-grad once travel opens up again, if it's next year or the year after. But I would suggest doing things like AmeriCorps in a way is kind of like studying abroad, but domestically. You'll probably be placed into another state or community that is totally foreign to your own, and it will challenge your comfort zone in a lot of ways. Peace Corps is another great learning opportunity. I talked about Fulbright. If you want to WWOOF, especially for people who are interested in agriculture and environmental studies, or just learning other cultures or being engaged, if you love traveling and eating different food, WWOOFing is a great opportunity where you pretty much travel for free, just pay for your plane ticket, and then you can spend months or weeks on time working as a farmhand on a farm. You get like half a day, I think, where you do some work, and then the other half you get to travel. So that's a really good opportunity. There's loads of opportunity to teach English abroad, especially in Asia. as the middle class are trying to get their kids out there to be masterful in English. And you can do that online right now, although usually they would like to see the completion of a bachelor's degree. It's a competitive market, but that's something that you could do and have it be a part-time job. And then also just seek opportunities to be abroad, maybe do a gap year in a way. But be wary of the term volunteerism. There's a lot of these volunteer organizations that will say, hey, come out and volunteer and give us $3,000. And it's all going to administrative fees, and maybe a little bit is going to the cause that you care about. But there's a lot of cash grabs out there. So just be careful and use your judgment if you want to volunteer abroad. There's a lot of scams. So yeah, that was my little spiel. Here's my contact information. And at this point, if anybody has any questions or any comments or any struggles that they're dealing with in terms of, being in times of COVID as a WJ student who wants to go abroad, I can try to offer some help and advice.
I was wondering, what did you consider doing when you were a freshman at W&J?
Yeah, I wanted to be a medical microbiologist or a cell biologist.
Mm-hmm.
Any of that, because the second I got abroad, I immediately said, this is something I want to be involved in wildlife conservation.
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar position as well. I'm taking a lot of those classes. Were you pre-health by any chance, or just wanted to go into research?
I was on the pre-health track my freshman year and crashed and burned, and then I leaned on the crutch that was Study Abroad in Magellan, and then I found my way back. That makes sense. But I think studying abroad too, especially I have some friends who made it through med school. If they studied abroad somehow, or even just did an intercession class, they stand out drastically in med school applications. And also, what does a doctor need? They need to exercise empathy and communicate across barriers. That's something that you get studying abroad or traveling. So is that something that interests you, or?
Yeah, I'm thinking, pre-health professions, maybe not physician exactly, but something around that. I'm just wondering, in a domestic setting, using different languages, when you're taking care of different patients, something like that, and using kind of those international skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you go abroad too, you understand that maybe people can't understand you that well. And I find that people who travel abroad more are better able to communicate with people who speak English as a second language, and our demographics are changing. And so I think the ability to understand what it's like to speak a different language, you don't even have to or understand that how hard it is to communicate in a place that English isn't the first language, will give you a lot of empathy. And that's a skill that I think, especially in the medical profession, is needed, depending on where you might
work. I'm wondering if there's a possibility to work in a medical profession abroad.
Yeah, absolutely. There's Doctors Without Borders, of course.
Right, yeah.
Red Cross. And then even just a lot of people who maybe study abroad in their undergrad years and think they want to be a doctor end up falling in love with the public health profession. And this is something that I've kind of dabbled with when I was in the Peace Corps working with malaria and stuff. But if you're a public health practitioner, you get to be situated with a nonprofit organization, or you can work with the US government, USAID, that's the International Development Agency. They send a lot of people out to do technical advising on some of these more medical expertise, or build the capacity of local health institutions abroad to help, save lives and whatnot.
Great.
Yeah, happy to. If any students in line, if you wanted to share why you maybe joined the call too, happy to talk through some ideas.
Jake, I'm going to ask you a question. You've done incredible things while you were a student at W&J. Is there anything you didn't do that you wish you had done?
I think it would have been a really good opportunity if I could have somehow known what I wanted to do in my freshman year, and somehow magically tying all my Magellan projects together. So I think it would have been a really enormous opportunity to do some kind of really unique study and do it, do a cross-comparative study where I design a survey or something and do it 1 year my freshman year, another my sophomore year, another my junior year, or even just do it across a semester abroad. If I could have compared some kind of, I don't know if that makes sense, but done some kind of research abroad, that would have been really interesting to do, or have my experiences connect in more meaningful ways.
Looks like Dr. Kilgore wants to ask something now.
Actually, I was just going to contribute something to Sammy's comments. and emphasize what Jake said. It looks like he just bugged out, but I'll get in touch with him. But many of my advisees who want to go into medicine intentionally choose to study abroad, especially in languages where Spanish is spoken. So because many of the people in this country speak Spanish, and they know that their clientele will be people, could be people who speak Spanish only. So many of my students will not only go and study in a study abroad program in a Spanish-speaking country, but seek out opportunities to volunteer and to conduct internships in those countries in medical facilities. So that gives them an additional opportunity and experience even beyond taking the courses in another country. But I'm going to follow up with Sammy myself. Thank you, Sid. Thank you, Jake. It's really good to see you.
You too. All right. So yeah.
I know Alyssa, so maybe I can ask her what she, why she joined this conversation.
Here, let me turn on my camera. Hi. I was just curious about studying abroad, so I wasn't doing anything. I didn't have practice, so I thought I would tune in.
Sorry, what's your question again? I missed you there in the.
I didn't have a question. I was just interested because I didn't have practice tonight, so.
What's your major?
Biology right now, but I wanted to double major in bio and environmental science, but I'm thinking about just majoring in biology.
If you were to study abroad, do you have an idea what part of the world and how that might tie into your interest in biology or environmental?
I've always wanted to like study in New Zealand because I was interested in like their wildlife there.
Yeah, it's a really cool place. Yeah, if you're interested in that, I would just, I don't know if you follow, but when I was in undergrad, I spent a lot of time going on Facebook and following different pages. So like if I were you and you really were serious about thinking about going to New Zealand, try to find some like big NGOs if you want to get more involved in environmental conservation, and like follow them on Facebook, and then they'll start posting about some different efforts that are happening on the ground. And then maybe you could study abroad in New Zealand, pick with a professor who maybe knows somebody in that NGO or whatever. Take some coursework there and get your whatever you're missing maybe that you want in terms of like biology coursework or environmental study coursework, and also get a professional experience too, and maybe become an expert or something.
I'll just chime in for a second, Alyssa, and say we have a wonderful program in Australia that's a great fit for the exact academic offerings you just mentioned. I'd be overjoyed to talk with you about that. Favorite program, Southern Cross University, and fun fact, they have a koala hospital on campus and you can volunteer there if you would like. So it's super fun.
And I have a buddy too who studied abroad in Australia, and now he works, he's getting his master's in Guam studying marine science. And so that experience that he did a lot of work working with coral restoration, I think in Australia or in Fiji. Studying abroad can open up opportunities to do postgraduate research or graduate research if you have an interest in pursuing your education further.
And Sarah, if Alyssa or anyone else wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way?
Sure. So we're in the hub first floor. My colleague, Dr. Dana Poole, and I are not there every day because of current conditions, but we are on Teams all day. You can message us or chat us anytime without an appointment. Our general email is studyabroad@washdep.edu. So if that's easiest for you to remember rather than our names, you can go ahead and reach out to there. Those emails get forwarded directly to us. You can be in touch anytime. And our favorite part of the day is anytime we're talking to students. So you are never bothering us. You are more than welcome to chat us, even if you're just thinking about something international and you want to bounce ideas off of someone. You're so welcome to do that. So please don't feel like you have to have a particular agenda to chat with us or to make an appointment. We're here to help you.
Yeah, I second that. If you're looking just to discuss and talk about international options and sort of long-term goals and what you want to be doing, it definitely is the best part of both of our days. And so you are welcome to message me on Teams. If you can remember, my name is Dana Poole, like swimming pool. If you can remember it that way with an E at the end. And I'm always so happy to hear from students. I'm in the office now. I'm here generally on Thursdays in the hub. So I hope to meet all of you. And Jason Kilgore, it's nice to see you.
And I'm more than happy to talk, Alyssa, as well. And you know, we all work together as a team to help support you. So I think, you know, if you're thinking about studying abroad in biology, it's always a good idea to start thinking about what kinds of programs you might want to do and when might be a good time to do that. And, you know, studying abroad one semester might be the only thing you do, right? You can be thinking about Magellan's and other things, but also how to weave that into your program, because like Sarah said, the program in Australia offers a lot of courses that can actually satisfy requirements in a biology major. So if you plan ahead, you don't take them here, you take them there, right? And then you make sure that you get everything else done at the same time. So Sarah, Dana, and I all work together to try to help guide you in giving you advice on how to plan for a study abroad experience, as well as any other faculty member, right, in biology who happens to be, you know, serving you.
And I actually, when I was studying abroad, that was the year I switched my major from biology to environmental studies. And so I started out and completed my environmental studies major while doing 2 semesters abroad, which is possible. It was a pain in the butt to get some of that course transferred through, but it's, if you are proactive and work with your faculty, you can the process.
Jake, I didn't hear you too well there. I don't know if it's on my end or your end, but you said something about some challenges that sometimes in transferring courses. And so do you want to talk a little bit about how to make that a smoother transition?
I would just make sure you have in writing from a professor that this satisfies this requirement. Make sure you have physical copies of the syllabi. And I think you can just, when you're studying abroad too, and the after fact, keep all your course materials, anything digital, I think, would just be helpful, for you personally. But if you need to articulate why this course is particularly well suited to fulfill a humanities credit, and you have the syllabus and the course material, and then the professor's contact information, I think you can cover your bases there.
So I'll just chime in for a minute and say you're right to keep all of those materials, and we will guide you through a process on the front end. So before you go abroad, we have a course approval process for transfer of credit and can answer any of those questions and help connect you to department chairs. And it can sound intimidating to have to talk to a department chair, but they do this every semester for our students. It's not an unusual, strange, weird thing to ask for. It's an established process that will help you go through so that you can know before you leave campus how things are going to count for you when you come back.
Yeah, I think my challenge was I changed a course when I got there, and that created some slight difficulties, but it was manageable.
Yeah. I just wanted to say hi to Fola Kemi. I met you. I know you have international hopes and dreams. Do you want to say hi?
I was actually going to talk about that. I'm like the only like psych student here, and I don't know. I guess I'm just wondering at this point if like study abroad is still an option, because I also brought in a lot of credits. So I was going to like graduate early. So technically this is like my junior year, and I don't know if I can still like study abroad.
Yeah, we have to talk about your individual case. I don't have your information in front of me. We can definitely talk about credits and things like that and how they would work with your intended graduation plan. We're hoping to offer study abroad again as soon as we safely can do so. So that's something that the college realizes is important. But why don't you come in or make an appointment virtually and you and I can talk about that in detail. I'd be happy to parameters with you.
I'll also say too, like I studied abroad my fall semester, my senior year, and I think that gave me a lot of momentum when I was applying for the Peace Corps or something like that. Or if you see a connection in how you want to use your psychology degree afterwards, you can really be smart in terms of what classes you take, especially if you go study abroad in an institution that perhaps offers some more practical or applied coursework that gives you some hard job skills that maybe your program necessarily doesn't have at W&J. And so you can really like have wind in your sails when you're looking at jobs and stuff, if that makes sense.
And I'll just add too that in addition to Jake's suggestions, Dana and I also have some options that we've compiled for students to do things after they graduate. So I hope to support you in having a semester abroad, because I know that's something that you're hoping to do. But if not, we will make other opportunities at least known to you, so you can start thinking about applying to them.
Yeah, I think one final thing I'll say is that definitely for the students on here, find people like Sarah and Dana and Dr. Kilgore to work with. And if you're not asking them for their help and suggestion and guidance, I don't think you're getting the most out of your money for your time at W&J. So, and I still bother Dr. Kilgore all the time. So it doesn't end when you graduate.
Well, Jake, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to see you and hear all the wonderful things you're doing and how you're still connected to the college and now representing us so well out in the world. And we're very grateful for the time that you put in to be here today and generously sharing your contact information for everyone as well. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. And I'm going to make this session available to others who couldn't be here. But I think we'll go ahead and conclude. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Everybody.
So great.
It's really good to see all of you, and thanks for your contributions as well.